Shalom, Kal Halayim Le Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS that rule well, and salutations and blessings to you elect 144,000. Alright. Coming back once again through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Racha HaKodash. This is more information on the rubber boom trade. Alright, the Amazonian rubber boom, not trade, Salaki genocide. All right. I did a lesson on this about 2 weeks ago, and there's more information that I found, so I thought it would be pertinent to bring it out to edify, hopefully. So this is this is from fch.ju.edu, and you can type in the title on Google, but I found this through DuckDuckGo, all right, which is another search engine brothers should be familiar with. It's it's a bit better. In the sense of you cut down a lot of BS and you can find things more easily. Things you're looking for. Anyway, it says this is pretty uh, dense in history, so this is pretty much just all history we're going to get into. So, introduction: during the first 2 decades of the 20th century, Western powers invested in the newly created rubber industry in the upper Amazon. American, English, and Dutch companies needed rubber for their automobile products and invested in South American countries such as Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. This was presented as a civilizing endeavor which would bring economic development while improving and transforming the indigenous inhabitants of the region, and thus they were fervently supported by national states and local elites. However, the idea of civilization proved to be an ironic tragedy. The civilizing companies, quote, put the Indians in a system of debt peonage, treated them as slaves and tortured them and massacred them. By looking at the records and the testimonies of people who directly experienced the business environment of the Amazonian jungle, this paper will explore the impact of the development of the rubber industry in Peru and Ecuador in the early 20th century, which is the 1900s. It will focus on the impact on indigenous communities that lived in the Amazon and will analyze the complicity and powerlessness of the state in the genocide which occurred. Setting the scene: economy. In the 1880s, South American countries such as Ecuador and Peru sent examples of their best rubber to the US and England to get the attention of foreign companies to invest in the South American rubber. The rubber was a very popular raw material at the time since it was in demand for use in multiple products. Therefore, the foreign companies became interested in the South American wild rubber that grew in the Amazonian region. They sent financial representatives to establish a trade system between the countries. Elite mestizos, people of Spanish Indian descent, which mestizo is like your mulatto, you know, for the for the Northern Kingdom, and the Southern Kingdom, um, from the Amazonian region, became very involved with the business and became traders and caucheros or rubber barons. Ecuadorians, Peruvians, Colombian, French, and Italians became traders and established the rubber station in the upper Amazonian region. They used popular financial transaction methods to rapidly make money on their investments. They received foreign money on credit for the rubber, which was shipped overseas once it was harvested. Location. Location played one of the most important roles in the rubber industry boom. The Amazonian region where the rubber trees grew was a pure region with very few outside influences. There were many diverse ethnicities among the indigenous groups who lived in the area as nomads, each with their own custom and dialects. Therefore, the indigenous communities were not united, did not communicate with each other, and as a result were not aware of the menace posed by the caucheros until they were confronted with their enslavement plans. Nevertheless, some indigenous groups were familiar with the missionaries who had entered the Amazon previously, and these groups were the first to be in contact with rubber traders. Governments. The governments from Peru or Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia received the foreign companies and expected an improvement in their economy. For example, in 1896, Eloy Alfaro expelled the missionaries and replaced them with foreign companies whom he believed were going to make the Oriente, the Ecuadorian term for the Amazon, progress. The president also granted citizenship to the Indians of the Ecuadorian Amazonian region to be a bountiful labor supply for the rubber companies. In the area of Minas, two rubber houses were extended into an area of dispute between Peru and Ecuador due to an old boundary controversy. The people in this area, therefore, were not Ecuadorian citizens. Ecuadorian politicians in Guayaquil and Quito claimed with pride the Amazonian region in dispute. This did little to resolve the problems of the indigenous people in this Orient province. Peru did not claim the people as citizens either. And see, this is a big thing, right? Like when we tell brothers like you had Jake oppressing Jake and enslaving them, and looking at them like other people, brothers that are new in the faith, they kind of maybe have a hard time with that. But there's a lot of history like this, man. There's a lot of history, and there's a lot of scriptures too, right? This is one I just didn't want to tear you all. I was looking for it. This is Zechariah 7 and 8. And the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto Zechariah, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord Yahweh of hosts, saying, Execute true judgment, and show mercy and compassions every man to his brother. And this is what we try to emulate. The best example is Yahushai, right? He was like a servant unto his disciples, man, right? So that's that spirit, right? Show compassion. The world is growing colder, man. The world is very cold. So it only makes sense why the Lord said, be fervent with your brother, man. Fervent love, right? Being brotherly, forgiving, compassionate, right? Verse 10, and oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor, and let none of you imagine evil against his brother in your heart. That's another thing, right? But they refused to hearken and pulled away the shoulder and stopped their ears that they should not hear. See? So Jake is they're out for themselves, man. This is Ezekiel 34 and 2. Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord, power unto the shepherds. Woe be to the shepherds of Israel that do feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock? Ye eat the fat, and ye clothe you with the wool. Ye kill them that are fed, but ye feed not the flock. Right? You know, it's bad enough, right? Like the thing is, like, let's say you're giving people the truth. You can still make merchandise of it, which is off. But you're not even getting the truth, man. Like going into the churches, right? And even different a lot of jakes are Nation of Islam, all these different things, man. And you're just suppressing Jake, man. Hey, you got a church that worships big booty women, and I promise you, Google it. Go Google it, man. And it's named after a goddess. I forget the name. Afro something died. Afro some goddess. But they use I think they either made their own Bible or some, but they have a church, they have a website, they have everything. This was like over 10 years ago. I remember I found this, man. So any kind of thing, like even like that, you oppress Jake, you bug them out, you lie to them, and then you take their money on top of that. And you feed yourselves, man. Right? Like the brothers, the elders, the apostles, we're supposed to be given our tithes, our alms, right? Because those men, they gave us the truth, right? And it's in the law anyway, to the best of your ability. But um, you're not even getting the truth, man. You're not getting the name of the Most High and His Son. All right. Um, yeah, you feed not the flock. Verse 4, the diseased have ye not strengthened, right? And when you came into this truth, you were at dis-ease, whether in the mind or the body or the spirit or all the above. And guess what? When you come into this word, you're gonna hear a lot. Hey, change your diet. Hey, you should eat this. Take this herb. Oh, what's this about? I never heard about this. Let me go research. You're not just gonna come into GMS, put your two hands in your pocket, whistling in the wind, you know. Oh, I'm an Israelite. Esau, yeah, white man's a devil. No, this thing is gonna push you. This thing will push you, man. All right, it's gonna push you to be a better you. Like in the world, that's all they talk about, right? Oh, I want to be the best version of myself. All right. Well, you're gonna be that in this truth, and if you come in GMS, man, right? So you got to strengthen them that are diseased. Neither have ye healed that which was sick, neither have ye bound up that which was broken, neither have ye brought again that which was driven away, neither have ye sought that which was lost. But with force and with cruelty have ye ruled them. Do you get my point? Right? With cruelty and with force, man. So of course you had Israelites enslaving Israelites, man. Right? Cruelly, right? Cruelly. And you have Israelites oppressing Israelites today, lying to them, cheating them, sacrificing, right? Cruel. Cruel is cruel, you know? Right? And verse 5, and they were scattered because there is no shepherd, and they became meat to all the beasts of the field. You became food. Like Jake says, you became food. All right? Like 50 Cent had that song, niggas on the corner, they be looking like lunch meat. You know? We became food, man. A spoil, right? Like a woman is a spoil, right? When you conquer a city, you get booty. Booty is gold, right? Jewelry, precious things, including women, defenseless things, right? So back to the article. So it says, yeah, that was my point about, they said they didn't view them as citizens because that was my point. The spirit led me somewhere else, but that was my point about, look, you had they called them mestizos. You had, I think, over 40 or 50 classifications of different so-called races. If one was mixed with that and this was mixed with this, and right, a caste system, right? It was very bad in South America. You had Israelites who went to the city and they despised the way of Indians. They still call them pinche indio, right? So they don't like that way of life, right? They call them cholos, which is a Latinized Indian, so-called Indian, what they call Indian, a wild savage, so to speak. That's what they call them, right? But those are Israelites, and then you had the like I said, the cholos, or the Latinized. That they said, look, we're with this new way of life. We're gonna go in the city, into the big city, right? You had you had Jakes, you had other tribes help as well. So it's not such an anomaly, such a wonder when you read about Israelites oppressing Israelites, just like Esau, because them niggas were trying to show off for Esau. Man, it says you get mad, right? But that's the truth. It says let me see. Let me jump down here, right? So it says the rubber industry and the Indians. It says the rubber industry in the upper Amazonian became notorious for the violation of human rights experienced by its workers. In order for the rubber industry to be successful, there was a need for a large, cheap labor force to get the rubber from the trees. The members of the elite who owned the businesses and the traders were not going to work the caoutchouc directly. The mestizos from the area were not willing to do the job either. The elite and the mestizos had the racist belief that the manual labor was not honorably, and consequently, only lower class people like Indians or blacks were intended to do that kind of job. The owners of the rubber houses realized that the Indians were the cheapest and most convenient source of labor they could find to work the caoutchouc. They were the cheapest because they did not ask for a large remuneration for their work. Since they had no idea of how much the caoutchoucs and the foreign companies made for the caoutchouc, they were the most convenient because they knew the area well. They lived and worked in the jungle, were adapted to the tropical and rainy weather of the Amazon, and knew how to get food and shelter even better than the cacheros. They knew traditional methods to extract the caoutchouc because the Indians used it for medicinal purposes. They were perfect to do the job. The only problem was motivating them to work. The question of how to make them work the caoutchouc has been analyzed by many. For example, Michael Tassig, who studied the writings of Casement, reached the conclusion that there was not a shortage of either rubber or labor. Instead, it was the capitalistic system that made labor a problem. The best way for the cauchero to find low-wage workers and produce more income from the caoutchouc was to make them work through terror, since few of the indigenous communities were familiar with the system of working for something in return. The missionaries therefore helped the rubber barons by showing them a system of free wage workers. Some indigenous groups from Ecuador and Brazil were a little more familiar than the Indians from Peru, since they had worked with Jesuit missionaries. The missionaries also tried to civilize the Indians by making them work for the church, and in return, the Indians received knives, cloths, cups, hammocks, etc. The missionaries disciplined the Indians by using them to build houses, convents, churches, and schools, and transformed them from their wild and useless status. Ironically, the same rubber barons became one of the causes of missionary displacement from the Amazonian region. The enslavement of the Indians, Ecuadorian and Peruvian indigenous people were kidnapped by the caucheros to make them work for their companies. The Indians were seen as grown-up children by the caucheros. Therefore, the rubber barons found it easy to take advantage of the docile and obedient temperament of the Indian and force them into rubber slaves. Most of the time, the rubber companies did not get their workers through traders and merchants. Instead, the Indians were captured from their region by the muchachos, the foremen who worked for the caucheros. The muchachos were men of African descent who were brought by the caucheros from the British Caribbean islands of Barbados or Trinidad. So this is my point. You had Jake on top of Jake, man, whooping ass, right? Further oppressing, you know? This is a whole shitstorm that we're in as a nation, I'm talking about, right? You got the 2/3, oppressing Jake, oppressing themselves, you know? The elect are somewhere out, scattered, affected by it. It was, I'm just talking about before the Great Awakening, right? It was just a complete shit show, man. It was just madness and confusion, right? It was, like Jake says, dog eat dog, man. It's a fucking jungle. I got this opportunity. I'm going to go make the best of it. These Indians, I don't even know where the fuck I am. Amazon, whatever. I'm getting paid good. But these are all Israelites, man, oppressing each other. These men were not intended to work the caoutchouc, but instead to supervise and discipline the Indians. The muchachos were expensive for the cacheros, but they were believed to be necessary. There existed the racist mentality that only black men were savage and strong enough to do cruel jobs. They punished the Indians and made them work through the use of terror and force. The West Indian men traveled to South America with the idea that they would gain enough money to go back home to improve their lives. Right? Nevertheless, the West Indian men were also caught in the debt peonage system. Their trip to South America, clothes, and food were given to them in advance. That's a JJ trick. That's a small hat trick. Therefore, they had to work for a long time for the rubber houses in order to pay the debt, and they received very little money to save for their trip home. 2 for 1. That's a 2 for 1 for Esau, man. You know, look, man, at the end of the fucking day, you 2/3, you're gonna get yours, man. But Esau, you're on top, man. And the Most High is on top of you. He's seen everything, man. He got aerial vision. He got 4D vision, man. You know? He sees everything. He sees everything, man. Someone gotta pick up the tab. Don't worry about 2/3. They're gonna get theirs, man. But you, Esau, you're at the top, man. You were profiting the most and causing you were the cause of the most carnage, man. All right? Damn devil, man. It says the Barbadians captured the Indians from their wilderness, supervised their work, as well as punished them if they did not work to the demands. There were also a few Indians who were born in the rubber houses and understood the system well, who were also muchachos, right? So there you go. These were usually pure Indians or mestizos and did the same jobs as the West Indian men. There were more muchachos than white cacheros, and more Indians than muchachos. The muchachos were always armed with guns and behaved as if they were in a constant war. The muchachos were also believed to be semi-civilized by the white cacheros. The white cacheros believed that they were semi-civilized because they were used to wearing clothes, working for money, and they spoke English and Spanish. However, the Indians and the consuls who witnessed their crimes realized how evil they were. The muchachos were the connection between the cacheros and the Indians. The caucheros never did the dirty jobs, such as gathering the caucho or forcing the workers to gather the caucho. The caucheros regularly sent the muchachos out to capture more Indians. They went to the areas where the Indians lived. The Indians normally lived close to the rivers. Then the muchachos with their guns captured several of the Indians, chained them up, and brought them back to the rubber houses. These capturing expeditions were very violent. Sometimes the muchachos killed more people than they captured. They captured everyone. They found men, women, and children. It says the Indians were kept in the houses in order to civilize them. While they were being civilized, they were put in chains or in cepos, stocks. The Indians were given clothes, machetes, and guns to make them ready to work. The Indians did not have a monetary system. Therefore, the caucheros used the Indians in a system of debt peonage to pay them for their work. The Indians were forced to sign employment contracts that they did not fully understand, but which forced them to work for long periods of time until they had gathered enough money to pay for the few things they had received. Sometimes the contracts were made for 2 years, in which the Indian was expected to work for the rubber company and gives all that he had collected to the employer. After the Indian had been told of the requirements, he was told how much they owed the employer. The Indian usually received a small item for their pay. The rest of the money was kept to pay for the original debt. As a result, they were kept in a system of debt peonage, which forced them to work for the caucheros for the rest of their lives. In other words, they became slaves of the caucheros, right? And that's the thing that, you know, hold on. Bear with me 1 second. Hold on. This is Zechariah 11:5, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord Yahweh, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. So this is hand in hand, you know, of what we're reading about. You know, Esau, uh, you know, he's in that spirit of fuck it, man. Like I'm rich. You know what I'm saying? Like, God bless America. And then their own shepherds pity them not. Right? What we're reading about Israelites oppressing Israelites, man. Um, hold on, this was here. So it says down here, the Indians were expected to work through the year in 3 or 4 expeditions. They were asked every 4 months to bring a fabrico of 50 to 60 kilograms of caoutchouc, rubber. In 12 months, they had to bring at least 3 fabricos of caoutchouc in order to be paid. Their pay was minimal, and in most of the cases, they were given very few things, so their debt would grow larger, and the opportunity of freedom would be farther away. For a fabrico, the Indians received a machete, a cup, pants, or a hammock. If they brought 2 fabricos, they might have received a gun, however, with very few munitions, so it would be useless after the munitions were fired. The Indians went to work in a territory which was divided into sections with one chief, several muchachos, and the Indians. The Indians, armed with machetes, penetrated deep in the Amazonian forest and gashed every rubber tree they saw. They cut the trees deep to get the last drop of milk, thus killing the tree forever. That's Esau, man. That's not how they used the trees. They knew how to use the trees. Esau just drains the swamp, man. He drains everything. He's a waste, man. He's just a waste on the planet. All right. You want Earth Day? Earth Day is gonna be Obadiah 1:18. All right. When there's a big bonfire. Okay, that's gonna be Earth Day. It says the rubber milk ran down the tree and after a few days it became very hard and ready to be taken to the rubber houses. Then they cleaned the surfaces of the rubber and made it into balls by wrapping it with ropes. And in this form of crude caoutchouc balls, the rubber was sold and shipped to the markets. And then the rubber was weighted in the rubber houses and later was sent in the steamers to New York or London. The muchachos received the orders from the white caucheros, and the Indians received the orders of the muchachos. The caucheros ordered the muchachos to keep a list of the caoutchouc each Indian collected every 10 days and made sure it fits with the required amount of caoutchouc. If the work did not fit with what the caucheros expected, the Indians were punished by the muchachos. The caucheros, however, were never fair to the Indians. The Indians, for example, did not get any food from the caucheros. They had to procure their own food. The Indians brought women and children to help them carry the food as well as the caoutchouc back to the caucheros. After they arrived with caoutchouc, they were confronted with many difficulties, such as punishment or terror instead of payment. Hardenberg experienced the cruelties of the caucheros when he was kidnapped in the Amazon and wrote the Putumayo 1912, a reminiscence of his experiences in his observations. The civilizing company apparently did not believe in paying for what it can be obtained otherwise. The rule of terror had been adopted. Hey, terror, hold on, let me get this. Oh, I'm thinking of, hold on, yep. Ecclesiastes 21:4. To terrify and do wrong will waste riches. Thus the house of proud men shall be made desolate. Right? And there's also hold on. Ecclesiastes as well in the Apocrypha 10:8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. Right? You damn devils, we're about to turn the page, man. On this queendom. It says the rule of terror had been adopted. The caucheros asked the Indians for an amount of caoutchouc that was impossible to get. If the rubber barons were angry because the prices of the caoutchouc were decreased in the foreign market, they inflicted their anger on the muchachos and the Indians. Punishments. One of the ways the Caucheros inflicted their anger was by punishing the Indians and the muchachos. When the Indians brought the Caucho to the houses, they reacted in relation to how the Cauchero felt. If the Cauchero was happy with the Caucho amount brought, the Indian leaped about and laughed with pleasure. However, when the Cauchero was not satisfied with the amount of Caucho brought, the Indian threw themselves face downwards on the ground and awaited their punishment. The Indians were punished by the muchachos through many cruel ways, such as by flogging, hanging, or putting them in sipo. Sipo were stocks where the Indians were held in painful positions without food or water. Some Indians survived the flogging and the sepo, but many died from these punishments. The Indians were also shot by the muchachos and the cacheros if they became sick while carrying the caucho, or if they tried to escape. The muchachos cut off the arms and legs an Indian and lit him on fire while he was alive for bigger crimes, such as not bringing in enough caucho, trying to escape, or killing a muchacho. The muchachos not only punished the male Indians who worked for the civilizing company, but they also punished the families of the Indians in order to hurt the worker because he did not bring enough caucho. The children and women were flogged and put in chains. The majority of the time, the muchachos were ordered by the caucheros to commit these horrible crimes, but sometimes the muchachos also abused their own power. They sexually abused the Indians, male and female, by raping them or by beating them on their genitals. After they were raped, they killed them or flogged them and sent them back to their villages. The young girls were also given to the West Indian men as concubines. The muchachos claimed they did not want to inflict cruelty on the Indians, however, they were forced by the cacheros. If they disobeyed the orders of the boss, they were penalized by the same cruel punishments. The irony was that these men were mostly blacks and had experienced slavery in their own country, right? It's not an anomaly, man, right? A lot of these things happen, you know, and that was pretty much it I wanted to bring out. You can read the rest at the bottom here about different subtitles here. But again, I hope you're edified with that. I want to say Kal Halayim, La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS, that Ruel, who I learned this truth from. And salutations and blessings unto you, hopeful elect out there. All right. Shalom.